So friends, for today's video, I wanted to go through some of the books that I have gotten recently. Almost every single one of these came from my local bookstore, Bookman, so I'll have Bookman's linked. As always, if you're ever in Arizona, you should check out Bookman's. They're incredible. Also, if you recently have moved to Arizona, Bookman's is really great about giving you store credit for all sorts of things, and then you can use that credit on anything in the store. Manga, video games, movies, musical instruments, decor, puzzles, and of course, books. A lot of these I got from Bookman's because recently my husband and I took a bunch of stuff in and we got a lot in store credit. I actually recently did a manga haul over on Full Meta Analysis, my side channel, and got a ton of manga there. I also got a ton of these books and we still have store credit. So definitely check out Bookman's, it's awesome. But anyway, jumping into the books themselves, I'll kick it off with Nightshade and Oak. Thank you to one of you. I always, when I do anticipated releases videos, if there's something that I've missed, I always ask all of you, feel free to let me know. You can leave it in the comments to give me a heads up, but also for anybody else so that they can see anything I missed. And one of you mentioned that this author had a new book out, and I had that completely go off of my radar, so thank you for mentioning it. This is the author who wrote Green Teeth. There's a new release last year that had more of an emphasis on friendship. It very much felt like a classic fairy tale, but then also you had that friendship component that was so much a part of the core of the story, and it kind of had this quest feeling to it as well. It was a lot of fun, standalone. I think it utilized the standalone format quite well, and it was the debut. So knowing that there was another book by this author out so soon was really exciting. And the nice part about it not having been on my radar ahead of time is that I have no idea what it's about, which is how I like, as much as possible, to go into stories. I like going in not knowing anything, and I have a rare opportunity to be able to do that. So thanks to Bookman's for having this. This one, usually Bookman's books are used, so they're quite inexpensive on top of everything else, but this one actually was newer because it's a brand new release. So it did kind of bite into the credit a little bit, but that's completely fine. Next up, we have The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door. I have read something else by this author that I really enjoyed, The Magician's Daughter, another fantasy standalone. I think The Magician's Daughter is a little bit underhyped, but I really, really enjoyed it. Also, any of the other books that I mentioned today, if I have reviews or anything like that for them, I'll have those linked in case you're like, I want to know more about that. So regardless, I have wanted to read more things by this author. One of my friends really, really enjoyed this particular book by this author, and I am excited to get into it. They told me a little bit about it, but I maybe don't have as little information as I do for Nightshade and Oak, but I also am lucky that I don't know a whole lot about this one either. I also, by that same author, because I like The Magician's Daughter so much, I went ahead and got A Far Better Thing. Unlike the other book by them, The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door, this one I don't know basically anything about. And I'm hoping what'll happen is, you know how occasionally you pick up a book by an author and you're like, oh, I really liked that. And then you realize they have a lot of other books out or they have a big backlist and you feel excited because you feel like you have found this treasure trove of stories that you can try to get into. And I have that feeling currently with this author. I'm hopeful that it wasn't just one and done, only one of them worked for my taste, which actually I have a question for all of you. Would you rather, if there is an author who has a decent amount of books out, would you rather have some that didn't quite work for you or almost worked for you, but you like them enough that you keep trying and then you finally find that one that you're like, this is incredible? Or would you rather immediately find the one that you love? I mean, I feel like as I'm describing it, it's option one, right? But you find the one that you love first and then you try other things and everything else is okay, but that one was incredible. I mean, yeah, I don't know why I'm asking this. The first option's better, right? This is a stupid would you rather. You don't have to answer the question. It wasn't a good one. Anyway, the point is, I really hope to like more of this author's works, and I found multiple at Bookman, so I thought, let's go ahead and give them a go. These next ones were actually used, so they were only $9 each, and I'd read the first one. I liked the first one. I will be reading more of this series, which I'm really excited about, and that would be the first one, Velocity Weapon. I talked about this one in my wrap-up at the beginning of the year, and then now I have the second one, which would be Chaos Vector. I don't believe they had the third. I would have liked to have gotten it because one thing I'm trying to do more of or be better about is if I start a series and the series is complete, to actually try to get through the entirety of the series instead of just reading one volume, sorry. I just did my manga haul, so I feel like I'm in the habit of saying volumes now. One entry into the series. I'm trying not to just read one single entry and then read a bunch of other stuff and then come back to it, because one, I think it's a disservice to the author, because obviously there's continuity that you miss out on. There's kind of that period of like, wait, what happened again? And you lose some of the emotional investment when you take too many breaks. And I recognize sometimes it's unavoidable if a series is coming out, or sometimes access to books. I don't want to make it like you're a bad reader if you don't try to read the whole series, because if that's the case, then I'm a terrible reader, because there are plenty of series I'm in the middle of. But I do want to be better about that. So when I saw they had these at Bookman's, I got really excited. And as noted, these were each only $9. Had store credit. Still have lots of store credit. Next up is a nonfiction book. And this one I haven't seen for any kind of discounted price at any point. I actually wasn't expecting this at all, but I was hoping to find it. And my husband actually found it. And he was like, oh, hey, it's half off. And that would be One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This. This is very much shedding light on the fact that how people feel when there are current atrocities occurring versus how people feel, or at the very least, the general consensus, how it shifts after the atrocities have committed, or after the atrocities have been examined, thoroughly researched, and enough time has passed where people are looking at it in hindsight, and it's kind of exploring that concept. I know it's going to be really devastating and really challenging to read, because it's also discussing things that are still happening right now, that continue to happen, and it just, I think, will be a very powerful book. And as noted, I wasn't expecting for my local bookstore to have it, so I don't know if somebody brought it in or if they were doing some kind of sale, but it was half off of its normal price. So I was really grateful to have found this one, or I should say I was grateful that Sean found it. Sticking with nonfiction, a while back I read Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. This is an autobiography. It was not only incredible and very, very eye-opening, at least for me, because I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge about anything to do with South Africa. So it does detail not only his life, but his involvement in trying to push back against apartheid in South Africa, but also the writing is incredible. So I have been looking for a copy. I always thought, I kept thinking, oh, it's Nelson Mandela's autobiography, surely I'll find it. And they kept not having it. And this most recent time that we went to Bookman's, Sean being oftentimes in the nonfiction section and history section and everything, he very sweetly, if he knows there's a nonfiction or history or something that I'm looking for, he looks for me while he's over there. And he came marching back and was like, look what I found. And I was like, oh, finally. So I am so happy to finally have a copy of this, because I've wanted it for a long time. And it's so weird to say just like Chaos Vector, but just like Chaos Vector, this was $9. This next one I know nothing about, but recently Sean and I hosted some friends, and I will link some videos I've done with said friends. So it was my friend Christy, my friend Sophia, and my friend Sarah. And we took them to a bunch of these bookstores. So actually we found a lot of these books while we were with them. But I asked Sarah at one point, I said, hey, is there anything around that you recommend and that you think I should get? And she really likes this particular author, Sharon Shin. And it was $5.50. It's a tiny little trade paperback. But she was saying that she likes this author's works. And Sarah and I almost always have the same taste. When it comes to your bookish twin, Sarah is probably the closest to being my bookish twin. You could say we're not identical twins, but we are still twins. And I think that's the case. I'm hoping that'll be true for this book, that I'll also really enjoy this author's work. And what's exciting is that, if I'm not mistaken, kind of what I was saying about H.G. Perry, I think this author has a decent amount of works. So if I like this one, then it'll open up a whole new list of books to add to the TBR. One more book from Bookman's. All of these have been from Bookman's. One more book from Bookman's. This one was $10, which was actually pretty surprising because it's in really good condition. It's a hardback, and maybe this is a really easy edition to find. I don't know. I've never seen it though. And that would be Daughter of the Forest. I have wanted to try this author's works for a really, really long time. And because I just have so many books, and because there are so many books I want to check out, it's one of those, if I see it, it's on sale, I have credit, I'll give it a try. But it's not like I was running out to find it. I wasn't on a quest to find it. But I really like this edition. It kind of has that classic fantasy look to it without, there's different things that come to mind when you say it has a classic fantasy look. Sometimes we're referring to different things, but there are certain covers that have this. That sums up everything I got from Bookman's. I do have a few other things to mention, and these two I did not get with store credit, and they were not on sale, but I was like, I mean, I really want to read these at some point. So my husband and I are trying to buddy read more books together, and we're also trying to read more classics. I have read with him at this point Wuthering Heights and Frankenstein, and not because of the adaptations. We just happened to have picked those ones up. And if it's not up yet, the Wuthering Heights discussion should be up soon, if anyone cares. I know this is a more fantasy-centered channel, so chances are not that many people care. But we both really liked Wuthering Heights, spoiler alert. We thought it was incredible. Anyway, one of the classics that I don't know too much about, but that I instantly thought, that sounds so funny, would be Madame Bovary. The thing is, Madame Bovary is a translated work, and there is one specific translation that people point to as, this is definitively the best one. And I found a lot of the other translations at my local bookstores, but the only one that, or I should say the one that people definitively recommend as the best, I couldn't find at my local bookstores. I looked at all of them basically, and I couldn't find it. So I was like, all right, I'll just bite the bullet and I'll just buy it. So it is the one, I should say the translator too, in case any of you are curious. If I can't find it quickly, then I will. It's right here. By Lydia Davis is the translation. That's the one everybody recommended. The reason that I got excited, by the way, this is winner of the French American Foundation Translation Prize. So kind of bolsters that statement that this is the best one. Anyway, the reason I was like, I have to read Madame Bovary at some point, even if I don't buddy read it with my husband, which I think we probably will. But even if I don't, I was like, that sounds so funny. And maybe some of you won't find this amusing, but there was a line that said something like, she wanted to die, but she also wanted to live in Paris. And I thought that was so funny. And maybe it's just one of those things where I don't know if any of you reflect on this and think this, but sometimes I think we have this idea that humor is specific to the here and now. Not that we literally think that. It's not that we don't recognize that people have always been funny and that humor changes and shifts and transforms into different things. It's not that I literally think that humor doesn't exist in other things, but I think there's this feeling of, oh, actually people a long time ago were really funny too. It's not just that, but it's also, I think, the way that people talk about the classics, and people talk about them like they're these dense works that no one can get into and you will need assistance when you get into them. I don't know. There's just this way that sometimes people talk about the classics that is, it's a little bit, sometimes it can be a little bit elitist, or it can be excluding people. It's not as inviting as it could be. And I don't want to say I fell prey to thinking that that was true, but it's hard to not have those types of statements in your mind. And there was something about she wanted to die, but she also wanted to live in Paris, which is clearly, I feel like that's a great statement to articulate what this book is, which is, it's like this woman who's experiencing existential boredom. But the book is also almost semi-satirical, and it's shedding a light on the concepts of contentment. And I think it's basically saying, look at this ridiculous person. And I'm like, that sounds really funny. If you're going to explore existential boredom, I don't want it to be moody. I want it to be written like this, because I think that's the thing about some works that have that theme, is that they can be a little self-serious. And I'm like, I mean, it's hard for me to connect to a character experiencing existential boredom, because there's a level of like, I don't know, I guess you can't really experience that unless you have the means to be bored, if that makes sense. But anyway, I haven't read the book yet, so I don't want to try to act like I know the ins and outs of it, but I just felt like that was so funny, and I have a feeling that this is going to, I'm hopeful anyway, be this new standard of snarkiness that I hold books to. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'm completely off. Maybe some of you have read Madame Bovary and you're like, I hate that book. It's not funny at all. And then after reading Frankenstein, I wanted to read Paradise Lost, which from what I understand, Paradise Lost is not the easiest to get through because it's an epic poem, if I'm not mistaken. And there are different editions that kind of walk you through. So this one happens to, on the page, give you some additional information about it. So it's not something I imagine. This is the one that I feel like people point to things and they're like, it's dense and hard and you'll need help. I feel like maybe Paradise Lost is more of an example of that. But it might take time, but I do want to get around to it. And then it's not just because of Frankenstein. One, I think it'd be really cool to read this story because I think it has had a lot of impacts on a lot of modern works without us even realizing it. And then bizarrely, I know some of you are going to think this is stupid, which is okay. I get it. But if you don't know what the idea is behind Paradise Lost, it's basically like a rebellion against God. It's the devil going against God. He is not exactly painted as the most cartoonishly evil thing that could possibly exist. There's almost like a level of charisma and charm, if I understand correctly. And so I guess in a bizarre way, there is kind of a joke in a lot of RPGs, not maybe in RPGs, but in conversations about RPGs. There's a lot of jokes that at some point the story is about like fighting God. And I don't know, I was thinking about a lot of the RPGs I've played. I'm like, that is kind of what a lot of it is. And then I had this, are all RPGs inspired by Paradise Lost? This like stupid, oh, what if they're all connected, dumb thing. But I actually think it'd be kind of interesting to read through this and to obviously appreciate it for the work that it is. But then also examine some of my favorite RPGs and really see if it does feel like the influences are there. I think sometimes fantasy fans have a habit of acting as though no works existed before Tolkien. That is when fantasy began. And you're like, well, it's obviously a very pivotal work for the genre. And it's one that most modern fantasy can find it can be traced back to. I think that's fair, but I don't think it's true. It's not even I think. It's not true that Tolkien invented all of fantasy. There have been stories that have existed for a really long time. He just made a really, really influential one that has made it so that how we think of fantasy today, you could say that was sort of the beginning. But it's not like he invented the concept of a fiction, basically, with fantastical elements. There have been all sorts of things that have existed before, and I think that it'd be really interesting to see how much I think this work has an influence on all sorts of other works. Maybe I'll read through it and I'll be like, oh, I don't know, maybe Frankenstein, that's the only one I can think has been influenced. Maybe I won't find anything. Next up, we have returning to some more traditional, straightforward fantasy books. We have the sequel to Shape a Dragon's Breath. The sequel would be To Ride a Rising Storm. I can't wait to jump into this one. Because I recently was hosting Friends, and before the Friends came, I was trying to do a deep clean of my house, also trying to do a bunch of home projects, and then on top of that, as is the case when you live in an older house, we also had to deal with some actual home maintenance, unfortunately. So the very beginning of the year has been really hectic, and I just haven't had a chance to pick this one up. It's one of those books that I wanted to pick up basically as soon as it came out, but I haven't had the chance just yet. But I will be reading this very, very soon. I cannot wait. I think the first book in the Non-Pasha Way Is It series, it's incredibly underhyped because it's so good, and I think so many people would really, really like it. And also there are dragons, and who doesn't love dragons? It is, in some places, shelved as young adult, and then I have seen it actually more often recently shelved under adult. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because whether you tend to typically gravitate towards adult fantasy or not, I do think that this book, it can resonate and speak to things in a way that is accessible and enjoyable for people that are both in the young adult age range and are not. So I think that it's a saying I come back to from time to time, and it sounds a little corny, but it kind of transcends age range. I think it's incredible, and I can't wait. I can't wait to read that second book. Last for today, mentioning once again the friends that recently stayed with us. One of my friends had a bunch of books that she was probably going to take in, and she was like, hey, do any of you guys want any of these books? If so, I'll bring them with me and then give them to you, which was very nice considering it's a lot to put in your luggage. But anyway, my friend happened to have the hardbacks of the Raven Shadow series. I have them out of order at the moment, so forgive me. But I have talked about before that I really enjoyed Bloodsong. I'm kind of really struggling to hold these books. I really enjoy Bloodsong. And I have been meaning to continue on with the series for years. This is one of those series that when I was talking about before, I'm trying to get out of the habit of starting one and then not reading the sequels for a long time. So this is a series that my goal is to actually read the whole series this year. I don't see the hardbacks fairly often. I think there was one time at a store called Zeo Records that I saw maybe one or two of them, and they weren't in the best condition. So the hardbacks are kind of difficult to find, and I was like, hey, I'll take those hardbacks. So what I'm going to do is either gift my paperbacks to someone, or I'll just take them into one of my local bookstores. But I am really excited. I'm so excited to have gotten these. So thanks, Christy, for giving me these books. That's it, though, for this book haul. As noted before, if I mentioned any books that you might want to hear more about, I'll have links in the description bar down below. Thanks so much for watching, though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.